This is Kanzenshuu, the podcast, episode 442 for the week of May 13th, 2018. What's up, everyone? Welcome back to Kanzenshuu, the podcast, an extension of the all-encompassing Dragon Ball fan site, Kanzenshuu. We cover anything and everything Dragon Ball in hopes of enlightening and a little bit of entertaining. Again, I say welcome back. My name is Mike, Vegito EX, but also just Mike. Pleasure to have you back in our, I was going to say in our ears, but no, we're in your ears. That's how this works. Podcast this week, I just got done recording an entire hour-long topic, so I don't want to delay things too long here. Great episode, great topic for you. I'm going to be chatting with Ajay, you know, the anime Ajay, trademark, registered copyright of Ajay Enterprises, joining me. And then also first time on the show, and I'm kind of embarrassed to have this only be the first time on the show, Stacey, Sailor Spaz, who did interpreting for Ryo Horikawa at Kameha-con, and then Ajay, who did some panels. We're going to talk about the convention. I get to hear all about it, all the great times they had, great stories to be shared. So look forward to that, talking about this anime convention that took place from May 4th to May 6th down in Texas. This is, it's not quite the first Dragon Ball convention. There was one that was held in Osaka in Japan a few years back, similar in nature to other Japanese conventions, which was more a spot for fans to congregate and talk, all that kind of stuff, but also share their wares, doujinshi and all that kind of stuff. But this was more of a traditional anime convention, full-on Dragon Ball style. And at the end of our chat, we talk a little bit about what we all have going on the website right now, because Ajay and Stacey are now official contributors to Kanzenshuu. So stay tuned for that towards the end of our chat. That's about it. I don't want to hold you up any further. Let's jump into the topic right now. Our topic for this week, we are talking about a Dragon Ball convention. I'm so excited to hear how this went and what everything was. And Ajay, hello. Are you well rested?
I am very well rested now. I've slept like 10, 11 hours a night since I got back. I didn't even think I was that tired when I was at the convention, but apparently I was, and apparently everyone had to remind me every 2 seconds.
You looked very
any
tired.
photo ever.
We're going to remind you here on the show now that it's over.
Yay, thanks guys. It's now part of my being. I've just accepted it now.
And then also joining us, I'm super, super embarrassed because as she reminded me, she's been visiting my website for a very, very long time, maybe more than either of us care to admit. Stacey, welcome to the podcast.
Hello, it's good to be here. I'm a very long-time listener, first-time contributor.
Well, you know what? That is important to note because technically we are now in a brave new era of Kanzenshuu where theoretically I'm supposed to be doing less work and letting other people do things, but I decided that the wiki is really fun and I've kind of been ignoring the rest of the website and I've been working on things that aren't supposed to be my projects.
Yeah, that's how it goes, right?
We'll talk about that maybe a little bit later on. So I'm curious to hear what you guys have in store for us in the future of Kanzenshuu. But for now, we're going to talk about this Dragon Ball convention. I'm going to say it very slowly because if you say it fast, you end up saying it a dub way. And so I'm going to say Kameha-con.
Very good.
How did everyone say it at the convention? Was it Kameha-con?
So I tried really, really hard before the convention started to say Kameha-con. And when I said that in my announcement video, I got so many comments that were like, you're saying it wrong. So I just gave up. I was like, fine, fuck it. Kameha-con, let's do this. This will do. I was sick of bullying by that point. I just thought, you know what? Fuck it. I'm just going to succumb to all this peer pressure and just get on with it.
You hadn't even gotten to the convention yet, and people are already doing that to you. You know, to be fair, the first convention that I ever went to was Otakon 1999. And to me, I know the word comes from otaku. And so in my head, reading the word online as I was getting there, I pronounced it as otakon because it's otaku and it's a convention. Little did I know that everyone pronounced it otakon. And that was bullied out of me very fast as well. So I sympathize with you well. So this was a convention that just took place in Texas. You guys seemed like you had a fantastic time. Let's get started talking about how you guys got involved with the convention. Ajay, I'll start with you. How'd this all come about for you?
Sure. So I think a year ago now, Geekdom 101, who hosted the event, said oh, I've been given this opportunity thing, to host this crazy big Dragon Ball first ever, well, supposedly first ever North American exclusive convention for Dragon Ball. And he very kindly offered me a panel and kind of just fought for me at basically every opportunity along the way, which was pretty great. I mean, he looked after me and got me involved, and that was pretty much it, really.
Nice. I want to hear about your panel in a little bit. I know you put up your panel, so people can actually just go watch it. We'll come back around to that. Stacey, how about you? You weren't a panelist, but you were very, very busy all weekend long. So how did this miraculous role come about for you?
Yeah, it's still like really crazy and weird to think about that it actually happened to me and like not somebody else. But I first heard about the convention last summer. I was talking with Therese, who was talking with Geekdom, and I kind of went through her for a little bit. She was like, well, he said they may need translators, so if you'd be interested, maybe we could, maybe you could get the chance to go. I'm like, well, yeah, that'd be pretty awesome. I was kind of wondering at first, like, well, wouldn't they ask like Herms or Julian or someone who's like, I don't know, I guess feels like they're more better at Japanese. More better. I mean, more better at English too. I guess I can't even speak that. I didn't hear the exact conversation, but I guess Jake may have suggested me when he turned it down. Like, I don't know. It's like I'm like 2 conversations removed from this, so I don't know exactly what was said. So yeah, I heard about it then, and then kind of was just like mentally trying to prepare myself because it was a pretty big thing, just being a Dragon Ball fan for so long and, wanting to do the best that I could at this job. So I was definitely very nervous, like even the months leading up to it, it's like I was already nervous, like it just so long before it even happened.
No, you did great. I think the thing that I heard beforehand was that the organizers were looking to bring in just like local translators, but Danny Geekdom was really, insistent on getting people who actually know the content well, so that the translations would actually make sense. And if there were like stuff that if they got questions that maybe like the Japanese voice actor, or I was gonna say voice actors, but Mr. Horikawa would maybe not understand, you'd be able to kind of adapt it in a way that he would get.
Yeah, I can tell you from experiences going to conventions for so long, there's always questions like that where the fans want to get really granular with things, and the actor would probably understand it if they could get one-on-one with the person asking the question, but it's got to go through the interpreter, and you can hear the interpreter kind of going through their head. How do I phrase this? What does this mean? And then, especially when you get things like dub terms going through an interpreter back over, it can be difficult. We've done similar things where I've recorded entire panels, then I'll send it to Julian, like, can you back up what the interpreter said here before we talk about it? But you guys didn't have that. You had Stacey there all weekend with Ryo Horikawa. That's amazing. That's fantastic. I'm so excited for you and so happy for you.
I know. And so I at first they were talking about getting multiple Japanese guests, but they weren't really saying like how are they going to do it if they were going to get multiple translators and stuff. So I kind of got my own backup translator with my friend Jen and said, because I know she's been training to do interpreting. It's like I've actually never had any training in that specific skill, so that's another reason why this was really scary. But I said, Jen, hey, would you like to come down to this convention with me? Because they did offer that I could bring a guest, and at first I was going to bring my husband. That's like, what if I could bring someone who could actually help out and get experience too? He's not that into Dragon Ball anyway, so.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's a little more.
Like if he were super into it, then yeah, I would have taken him. But yeah, I was like, well, if I get another helper to translate, we can kind of work together because it's the first time for both of us doing like an actual interpreting job.
And she was a Brit, so I wasn't alone.
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I couldn't entirely Brit shame when there was 2 of them there.
It's because she called me over for backup at one point when you were bullying her. That was nice.
Oh, right, yeah.
Seems like there was a lot of bullying going on at this convention. We'll come back around to that. I want to hear more about the interpreting itself. As you alluded to, it's a very different skill set than simply translating something and having the time to go over your translation, consult other people, consult literature, and then present a final product. How was it being on the spot? Did you learn anything new about the language by doing something like that?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, there was two of us there, so we kind of tried to work out a system for how we would be doing it. Mainly it would be her doing the translation from English to Japanese for the questions for Horikawa, and then I would do his replies from Japanese to English to the audience.
Gotcha.
And, but since we were both wanting to back each other up, we were kind of both taking notes while he was speaking, just so, if one of us missed something, then the other could jump in and kind of say, oh, and also this. Also, if there were questions that, as you mentioned before, like very specific to a scene or something in the show that she wasn't aware of because she doesn't know much about Dragon Ball, then I was there to thoroughly explain exactly what went on in that scene. And sometimes he still didn't understand, but there was one funny moment with that actually where in the Three Vegetas panel, they had Brian Drummond, Chris Sabat, and Ro Horikawa all together. And one part they were talking about the Copy Vegeta episodes.
Oh, yeah.
And how they brought Brian Drummond back for that. And like, there wasn't a specific question for Horikawa during that, but we were trying to explain to him what they were talking about, and like
right, because in Japanese was it Masakazu
yes.
or Morita? Or?
Yeah, Masakazu Morita played Copy Vegeta, Whis' actor. First, she was explaining what they were talking about, and then he didn't seem to get it, so I thought, well, maybe because she hasn't seen the episode, she doesn't really know how to describe it, so I was trying to tell him about what they were talking about, and then he still had this blank look on his face, like, what? Copy Vegeta? He didn't even remember the episodes, and I even pulled up my phone and showed him a picture of Copy Vegeta, and he still just had a blank look on his face. It's like, wow. So yeah, if there's any video of the Three Vegetas panel and you see me and Jen frantically talking to Horikawa while they're talking about that, and me showing the phone, that's what was going on there.
All right, I think this is actually the best story I've heard from the convention so far. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, tell me more about Horikawa over the weekend. What was his kind of day-to-day at the convention? Was he just doing panels? Was he doing signings, all the above? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he had several. I guess I'll start from the very first day that we met, which is the Thursday before it started. We went and picked him up from the airport to meet with him, and also his manager was there as well. So we had the two of them and the two of us hanging out for most of the weekend. It wasn't, when we first heard we were going to be interpreters, we weren't sure, okay, is it this just during panels that we're going to be with him, or are we going to hang out between? We didn't really know, but it did turn out that we were kind of with him most of the time, pretty much, when he was at the convention center, and then also went out to dinner afterwards. So pretty much all day we were with Horikawa and his manager, which was, it was especially surreal at first. Like, was like, oh my god, I'm talking to Vegeta. I can't believe it. Because I did meet him once before at another convention, but just as a fan, like at his panel, right. At his signing table, like not like actually working with him. But yeah, so first the conversations were kind of like, we don't really know what to talk about. We're nervous. He actually has really good English, so.
Well, that was the thing going into the convention. I think a lot of people mentioned, and I've seen this myself firsthand, that Horikawa's English is pretty good. He seems like he understands more than he can personally communicate from time to time. But even then, he's still pretty good. So it seemed like that was probably a great first guest all around for you.
Yeah, definitely. It was a lot easier having someone who could, understand most of what was happening. And I mean, in the panels, we would do the interpretation, but we didn't have to, like, every single time that anyone talked to him, we didn't have to interpret. Like, he could sit and have conversations with other voice actors and be just fine. Like, there was one, I guess the first day of the con, we were in the green room with Brian Drummond, and they were kind of just talking to each other, and they were. Oh, awesome! I know.
That had to be super weird because I know you've been around as long as I have. So it's like, oh, you're Vegeta. Oh, you're Vegeta.
I know. I was like, there's two Vegetas. Like, oh, and there's three Vegetas. There was a lot of Vegetas together at once. But yeah, Brian Drummond was actually a really cool guy. We just kind of chatted with him while we were sitting around. And so he had the first day of the con, there was the opening ceremonies, which Horikawa was the final guest at that one. They kind of did, they went through all the different voice actors. I guess before even that, they had a red carpet premiere, which was kind of interesting. I've never seen that at a con before, but they had just like this curtain and this red carpet that came out. And then they would announce each of the each of the guests, and they'd say a thing and walk down the carpet and shake hands and high fives and stuff. Yeah, I was pretty amazed at the crowd that gathered for that, because after the red carpet, we went up this escalator, and then like you could just see this view of all these people crammed into this small area. I was like, wow, everybody's super excited. But yeah, then after that, he had the opening ceremonies, which was just, just a short little blurb where he had a couple... Geekdom had a couple questions and answers, or no, Geekdom had questions, Horikawa had answers at the opening ceremony. So that was our first interpreting, I guess, gig, was that short bit, which I think it went pretty well. We were both kind of scared to watch things back, to be like, oh shit, we probably missed something, or but overall it seemed most of the interpreting went pretty well, especially for our first time. He also had many signing sessions throughout the weekend. He was good about going back to the table and we'd even put up times on the booth, because it was kind of like there was just opening signings throughout the day, but obviously the celebrities aren't going to be at their booth for 8 hours at a time. Right. So we would try to coordinate. It's okay, we have to leave and go to this panel. That'll be done at this time. So we'll put up a sign that says, okay, we'll be back at about 2. And then every time we came back to the signing table, there were people lined up waiting for him to come back, and they would always applaud. And it was really, nice. Yeah, we were next to Sean Schimmel's table, and he was barely ever there. Yeah, and then there were also these meet and greet events that were kind of a cool thing that I guess people had to pay extra to get into, but it's other than the big Q&A panels, not many people get a chance to ask a question, especially the way it was done here, where it was mostly Geekdom had pre-prepared questions and not so much audience, which I actually thought was a good thing, because that avoids the cringy questions a lot.
Yeah, that was very, very intentional.
Yeah,
it's a good thing. That's a very smart way to conduct panels. You feel as an audience member like you are still being represented, because they're audience questions, but it does allow you to move on from questions when things aren't flying and when someone can't really get their words out, which to some degree you can't really blame someone if they get super nervous. They get up there and they're stammering a little bit, and they're just so enamored with the person in front of them. But that does really hold up the panel, and it holds up other questions. I think pre-prepared questions is a really smart way to go. I wish more conventions would do it that way.
Yeah, and Geekdom had one pre-prepared question from someone who asked about takoyaki, and it was confusing too. I guess the background is that Geekdom asked Herms if he had a question, and I guess he told him, ask him about what type of takoyaki he likes. And then once this question came up, Horikawa was kind of type of takoyaki, but it's pretty much just one type. What is this question about? So thanks, Herms, you derailed the panel.
I would expect nothing less from Jake, especially not even being there.
Good.
Yeah, and then so Jen thought maybe he meant okonomiyaki, because there's this debate in Japan of Osaka style versus Hiroshima style. So we kind of steered it to that, just to say, well, here's a question he can answer, I guess, about his okonomiyaki preferences.
And that also goes all the way back to Vegeta's cooking hell in the song as well. That's part of it. That's probably what the through line is here.
And I regretted I wanted to ask about that, and then I didn't think of it until later. It's since we're talking about okonomiyaki, I should have asked about the song, but in the moment I didn't remember.
Yeah.
But, yeah, one of those regrets.
If one of your only regrets is, I didn't ask Horikawa about an old image song, I think you did pretty good.
Yeah, I wonder if he remembers that one, because, well, I guess it was a song separately recorded from the show, so maybe it might be more memorable, but since he forgot Copy Vegeta, I don't know what the chances are of him remembering a decades-old image song. But yeah, I guess I was kind of talking a bit about the meet and greets, which were the little panels where people could just have more time to do autographs, pictures, and ask questions kind of more of in a one-on-one setting. And in those panels, I kind of took over both halves of the translating, because all the questions were pretty specific to the series. In this scene, when this happened, what did you think? I also had to do a lot of translating of dub lines, as in not directly translating back to Japanese because that doesn't work because they don't directly translate, but trying to remember what exactly was said in Japanese at that same point where that dub line was used. One that I remember was someone asked for him to sign their big poster with, I think it was, "Oh, I'm doing this for you, Bulma Trunks, and even you, Kakarot." But in the original, that was where he was saying farewell. So I said, well, actually, it would be Sarabada, Buruma Torangsu, Soshite Kakaroto. Yeah. So several cases where I had to do remembering the script in Japanese, which was kind of fun and kind of made all of them like, oh, this fangirl, she like knows way too much. What the hell? Yeah.
That's still really fun, though.
Yeah, I couldn't really hide the fact that I was a fangirl. I'm sure a lot of people saw the video where Horikawa was doing the final flash during the opening ceremonies panel, and I'm just sitting next to him like, ooh, freaking out.
That was one of the greatest things ever. You can literally see you melt as it happens.
Yes. Yeah, because he was so like just soft-spoken in his regular voice. Like just
right, he's
just
not super bravado, man.
Yeah, so when he pulls it out, it's like, holy shit, it's amazing.
All right, you're an amazing actor.
Yeah,
it's so cool. Well, AJ, I want to hear a little bit from your perspective because you weren't necessarily busy all weekend, but you had a job to do, and then I know you and friends sat in on each other's panels, did some contributions that way. So maybe tell me a little bit about the flow of your convention.
Sure. So I guess for me, I kind of like turned up on the Friday, I think, and kind of saw that red carpet thing kind of as it was going on. And it was, as Stacey said, it was manic and crazy. I think that very much kind of set the tone for the convention. Like everyone was kind of getting equal cheers. And that was really what I appreciated the most about the convention. Like everyone seemed to kind of put aside their preferences and opinions on various things and just kind of appreciate that everyone was there for Dragon Ball.
Yeah, I feel like if you're going to something like this, you're not the kind of person who is the anti-blank, whatever here. Like you're a Dragon Ball fan and it's Dragon Ball, so it's fun regardless.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, like there were certain cases where like someone might say like Saiyan and someone like might mutter Saiyan, but you mean Saiyan? And I mean, there was one point, I think it was during Hail Zeon's panel where he was like saying Saiyan over and over without really thinking, and someone at the back was like quite angry, like it's Saiyan, and someone had to like butt in and be like, no, Saiyajin to Saiyan, and I don't know, it was just this cool community aspect to it, where if there was ever any little thing like that, it was always like very peacefully resolved. So that was a great feeling.
That happened too in Horikawa went on one panel where I said Saiyan when I was translating something, and Geekdom's like, see, you can say Saiyan, it's fine. like it's okay, yeah. You don't have to point it out like that. You're just embarrassing me now.
No, it was great. I'm trying to think, what did I do? So I basically ate a lot of food and spoke to loads of people. Yeah, so I mean, I think it was the Friday morning, I went to breakfast at the hotel with Geekdom and a couple of his YouTuber buddies, and Peter Kalamis and Brian Drummond showed up at that point, and I'm just like melting inside because they're just there, and that's, you know, someone from the UK, that's kind of the voices for pretty much my entire childhood, you know, barring that little bit in the middle. And they were really, really nice people. I think that was probably the best part of it for me, is that even though maybe I don't maybe watch the dub, or I don't, you know, really, you know, focus on that stuff anymore, it was kind of great to just talk to these people as actors and get to know them as people. Right. And they were very, very nice. So then the next day on the Saturday was, of course, the panels. I was kind of nervous, but not as much as I thought I was going to be, which was surprising.
Let me ask you this. So my experience with a lot of these kinds of panels is the folks that show up are the folks that are already your fans, readers, listeners, and or already know the subject material. Something that's been very difficult at conventions over the years is pulling in that new audience who doesn't necessarily know that subject matter but are looking to learn more about it. What kind of feeling did you get from your audience at your panel, which specifically was about animation, Dragon Ball Super, stuff you and I have talked about a lot on the podcast here? Was it folks who already knew everything and were just looking to have fun and clap along? Or did you see any faces that were like, oh, wow, I'm learning something?
So it was largely the latter, actually, which was great.
That is good.
And I guess kind of not great in a way, because the reason that kind of happened is that there were loads of people queuing out, like the panel rooms weren't particularly massive, but there were loads of people queuing outside of the panel room. And I guess they they changed this the next day, but basically they kind of stopped those people who had been queuing for a while and like let all the people in with VIP tickets. And so they they seemed to be people who maybe weren't familiar with me. There were definitely a couple of people who like tweeted me afterwards, like, "Oh, I didn't get in," you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, largely on the whole, there were lots of ooh and ah, and they were very surprised. And I think what was kind of cool is that when I was like researching for the panel, I kind of discovered things here and there. Like there was the whole thing about the Digimon movie going from a TV series to a movie and stuff.
Yeah, as I was watching that, I was like, oh my God, that's right. That was part of the story here. I tend to forget about that. As you mentioned, we talk about the Toriko side of things and transitioning in and out of Kai, but I totally forget about Digimon.
Yeah, it totally passed over me. Like as I was writing, I was like, oh, that's a new new thing that I had never really spoken about before. So at the very least, the people who maybe had heard this kind of story before were happy to hear something new. But I think the best feeling really was just the celebration of the animators. I think what was so great is that people would like cheer for certain scenes and certain animators, which is great, because that's like the reason I started my channel, was to kind of draw attention to the people who actually work on the show. So to have people kind of cheer at certain names was like very weird to kind of see that actually in real life. As opposed to in like a comment section.
This is something you've talked about where, yeah, you're there to be critical and detail some of the history. You're also very big on celebration, though, and just bringing this knowledge to people who otherwise wouldn't know it, and to see that transition into a quote unquote real life setting, that's really special too.
Yeah, no, I had an absolute blast. It was so motivating. I said this in my vlog as well, like just the people who came up afterwards, whether they were people who had watched my channel before or people who were just like, wow, that was really interesting. It was such an amazing feeling just to pass that kind of knowledge on to people. It was great. Really enjoyed it.
I know you and some buds had a lot of other panels. What were some of the other panels that you were either involved in or saw and just thought were neat?
Sure. So the panel that was directly after mine was Olympia's Ollie_DB on Twitter. She's a big fan artist in the community. She basically did like I don't know what you would describe it as, like a Toriyama's approach and toolset kind of thing, where she spoke about sort of what makes Dragon Ball look like Dragon Ball, and what are some of like the common mistakes that fan artists make that kind of push them from or rather that keep them away from looking professional. Like maybe the eyes are too far apart or something. There are very like specific traits of Toriyama that some people miss. So she went over that. She went over like some of the tools that he used, like the specific inks, and then she did a live drawing. She drew Cell for everyone, while me and Tyson, who was someone else who helped on my panel, took some questions and answers, which kind of devolved into trashing on Toyotaro, which was fun. Yeah, I was kind of surprised at how many artists were kind of like, so yeah, that Toyotaro guy, because I guess Toyotaro in general seems very popular, but yeah, to kind of to fill a room full of artists. She did a poll at the start to see how many people were artists. A lot of people had problems with Toyotaro, but anyways, so the next one directly after mine was Tyson's music panel. He kind of went over literally every single composer Dragon Ball has ever had, and it was just a fun experience. He kind of went over the different styles that each composer had, and if stuff evolved. He talked about how like Kikuchi started doing very like Wild West sort of music around the start of Z, and like even the very vocal Faulkner fans that were in the back were very appreciative of everything. So that was great. And then I think the next day we had Hail Zeon's panel. It was the GT apologist panel, which was it was a lot of fun. It was very different from a lot of the other panels, which were very much about sort of sit down, let's talk, about informative stuff with a bit of humor mixed in. His was very much like a stand-up comedy special, kind of recapping GT and kind of reviewing it in a way and talking about what works and what didn't. And in general, it was just like a very funny, very sort of community-driven experience for about 45 minutes. Had a lot of fun with that panel. And then Lance's panel, Mr. Fusion, I think obviously listeners will know him very well. He did a whole thing about the Z split between, the first anime and the second fucking anime.
I was going to say, listeners of the podcast will have heard like the draft version of it on the podcast here on our forum as well. So it's cool that Lance basically does the same thing I do, where I use all my different outlets as like the rough drafts for what the final version will be. And for him, in this case, it was at a panel. That's awesome.
Yeah, I think his panel was probably one of those cases where, you mentioned earlier, like how many people were like, "Ooh, that's new," but that kind of thing. His was definitely the one where I was looking around and like, wow, a lot of people are learning things here. There was a dude next to me literally taking notes.
That's awesome.
Yeah, his was great.
That's the ideal of a fan convention panel to me.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. There was also Detective X and Comic Book Drake's Unpopular Dragon Ball Opinions panel. I only caught the end of it, unfortunately. I was tied up in the morning, but apparently that went really well. The ending bit I caught was kind of just like a big open forum debate kind of thing. It was a lot of fun. They had like rules on the board, like you had to back everything up and positive vibes only. If you're gonna throw out a really hot take, be prepared to back it up and be prepared to debate it in a friendly way. And so yeah, that stuff was a lot of fun. I wish I'd been able to see more of that. But yeah, in general, the panels were really, really great. I think that was very much the benefit of having a host like Geekdom help the organizers kind of pick people out from the community. So you definitely had people who really knew their stuff. It was definitely a very, very good feeling.
Tell me a little bit more about the attendee side of things. And obviously, Stacey, you had a job basically the entire time, but I think maybe you can speak to this a little bit. Ajay, you kind of alluded to it. I did read some issues with the VIP thing where that sounds like a good idea in theory, but was it true from your perspective that were people being left out of things because they hadn't ponied up for that?
Yeah, kind of. So as far as like the big panels went, I think it was kind of fair enough there. The VIP access, they got in first, they got those early seats, and they were allowed to have priority for questions, which I think that's fine. And I don't think many people really had an issue with that. I think it was more for the stuff that was limited, like those panel rooms where people were queuing up for, well over an hour to get in and get a good seat because it was such limited space. And so to have, VIPs come along at the last second and just stroll in and they didn't get in the end was definitely a misstep as far as organization went. I believe on the second day, I'm not 100% sure on this, but this is just what I heard, that they basically divided up the VIP and the standard tickets for those panels way more evenly than day one. So I think they definitely learned from that. I don't know what they're going to do for next year, but it was definitely a bit of a controversy on the, I was going to say day one, day two, technically it was 3 days, the Saturday.
Stacey, how about from your perspective, just seeing people out there with Horikawa? Obviously Horikawa was one of the bigger guests. You probably had more room to spare compared to some of the other panels. But did it seem like a lot of people were getting their time, getting their opportunity with him?
I think so. I mean, for one thing I saw with the VIP, it was at the autograph lines too as well, where there was a normie autograph line and then the VIP autograph line. And basically we would have to take everyone in the VIP line before we could take anyone in the normal line, which I could see some of the people kind of getting annoyed because they'd been waiting longer. And then,
for something like that, you might want to do like 2 VIPs, 1 normal, 2 VIPs, 1 normal.
Yeah.
If you're going to do something like that, there's probably a better way to split that up.
Which we kind of did, and then we were told we couldn't. So, we tried to come up with a solution on our own, but we were told by the staffier staff members that we couldn't. And by the way, the autograph line, so many people got Pop's signed. I'm so disappointed in you people.
God.
So
Is that still a big thing? I thought that was kind of over.
I saw many of them.
I walked into the exhibition hall or whatever it was where they were selling stuff, and there was just a wall of Funko Pops. And oh God, I turned to Speed, who was with me, and we just cringed inside. I hate those things so much. They're so scary and soulless, and to see millions of them looking at you from the wall with their dead black eyes is just.
I feel like the only appropriate one is Zeno Omniking. Like that makes sense.
That one's perfect.
I'll always be salty that the only pink shirt, the only Badman Vegeta shirt I've ever seen is a Pop, and I refuse to buy it even though I really want a figure of that.
That's such a bummer. Tell me more about autograph stuff, because I did see pictures flying around. Some people people brought some truly unique items. So, AJ, I saw you got your Rock the Dragon set signed by folks, but Stacey, what were some of the really cool things that people brought up for Horikawa?
One that I was especially impressed with was someone had the first issue of Jump that had Dragon Ball in it. And it
oh my God.
Yeah. And I asked them, like, how much did that cost you to get? And they're like, it was already hundreds of dollars. And there was a lot of signatures on it, too. So obviously this person had been to other conventions. I mean, I couldn't see if the signatures were from dub people or Japanese, but yeah, there was a lot of signatures on it already. And yeah, that was a really cool one.
I see. I mean, just for information, I usually see that go for around $400, $450 on eBay and Yahoo Japan. So
yeah, some people had like really big, like elaborate, like wall scrolls, like super, like 6 feet long.
Nice.
One girl had a Vegeta body pillow.
Oh, wow. Okay.
That I laughed at that, and apparently she knew who I was too, because I'm somewhat known as a Vegeta Bulma fan, and so was she. So she was a fan artist, so like, oh, okay.
Sweet.
Wasn't there a Legend of Galactic Heroes thing that someone brought?
Yeah, there was. I think there was two who had Legend of the Galactic Heroes. One was a figure, one was a some type of print, I guess. Someone did have a cell of Vegeta that they got signed. Yeah, but it was mostly Dragon Ball stuff, or just some people had random stuff like, I don't have anything, can you sign my shoe? But yeah, he was totally fine with, like, he was just so chill and ready to, just to sign whatever people brought up to him, and just chat with the fans, shake hands, take pictures. I mean, the autograph booth, it was for money, of course. They make a lot of money at those signing sessions. And we didn't even have a, like, actual cash box. We just had a literal box that we had thousands of dollars crammed into. I was scared. I was so scared of losing that box.
That's one of the differences. And this convention seemed like it towed the line between a traditional fan convention run by a nonprofit organization and a traditional corporate convention. It seemed like it was a little bit of both. Ultimately, it was still a corporate convention just due to things like one of those hard delineations is charging for autographs, those kind of things. It's really a corporate style event. Did it still have that air of DIY fan convention though?
I guess so. I was not out in the main part of the convention very much. Like, we were pretty much always either like in panels or autograph lines or waiting in the green room between those two things, and then kind of going through back passageways most of the time so he wouldn't get swarmed with people. Yeah, we kind of turned into like this entourage, like surrounding him to try to keep people from coming up. Because there were some parts where like you could go back ways for most of it, but then there were certain parts, like there was one part going from the green room to this back stairway where you had to go through part of the dealer's room. We would just kind of like surround him and like try to, and you could see people's faces, like some would just like look at him and go, oh, holy shit, it's Horikawa. And it's like, move along, we can't stop, move along.
AJ, how about from your perspective? Did it feel like just a fan run community kind of thing still?
So this was my first ever convention, so I have absolutely nothing to gauge into this. Yeah, conventions in the UK are dreadful. You basically have Comic-Con in London, and then everything else is just shit. It's in like a shed. Like it's dreadful. So yeah, this was my first proper big thing. So I have nothing to gauge it against.
Oh yeah. Well, I guess I have the perspective of I've been to very many fan conventions, but never as a staff person. So yeah, this was definitely a very different experience for me, having been, 18 years ago, I think was my first convention. So yeah.
Yep.
But from what I saw, all just the fan excitement and everything, it still felt very much like fan run, even though it was kind of industry. Yeah, the vibe was definitely really great. And my friend Jen says now she wants to become a Dragon Ball fan because of all the excitement and joy that she felt this weekend.
That's great. That is all the things you want to hear. Everything that you guys have told me sounds like it was good. From the informative panels with people learning things, just smiles on the faces, wanting to become a Dragon Ball fan even after not really being one. Just seeing that community response. That's a fantastic thing.
Yeah, I think having Geekdom as a host was definitely interesting. From my experience, like I said, I've never been to a con before, but having someone who's obviously a mega super fan of the series, you definitely got questions that you wouldn't necessarily get from someone else who was maybe just hired for the event. I mean, like he was asking stuff like, you know, I got some cool informative stuff from Horikawa at one point. He asked him, you know, like, what's it like to record? Like, do you record like the finished footage, or what's the deal? And he said something like, "Oh, we mostly record the unfinished animation." He also asked Chris Sabat, you know, how are you approaching the Dragon Ball Super dub? It feels kind of like a sort of an in-between Z approach and the Kai more accurate approach. And he said like, well, everyone's seen it in Japanese, so we're kind of adding our own flavor this time, which made me groan. But, you know, that's an answer. So it was those kinds of questions that I don't think you would have necessarily got from a more standard host, and I think, I think obviously having a YouTube, it was also great for that big community experience that we've both been talking about. You know, having a recognizable voice, I guess, rather than face, was definitely helpful in that sense.
What do you think for next year? It sounds like there will almost entirely likely be another one next year. Do you think this setup worked? What could be different? What should be different?
I think if they do things next year, they should probably have more stuff on. It's not that people didn't have stuff to do. It's more that there wasn't like masses of choice. You know, if you weren't at a panel, you were kind of just sort of wandering around, and if you didn't want to shop, you were a bit sort of left out in the open. So I think maybe they could have a couple more events, maybe like little competitions or something like that to do.
It sounded like there were some video game, like a fighters tournament, that kind of thing.
There was definitely stuff.
Was there a separate artist alley versus dealer's room? Was it all just one kind of big room for things? Was there even a fan artist presence? I guess I don't know that.
Yeah, so the room itself was just like, it was like this big, massive hall that had the signings in like one bit, the artist alley in one bit, the merchandise bit in one bit, and then like the fighters tournament in another bit. Like it was this big, very loud, just mess of people, which was, I mean, great in some ways because you weren't walking all over the place. But I guess if you wanted a more focused event, you might want to split that up a little bit differently. They had the cosplay exhibition stuff on a different floor next to Shamel and Horikawa's signing thing, which felt a little bit weird. I think if they were to do things next year, I would personally move the fan panels into a bigger room, sort out that whole VIP normal thingy. Maybe place the signings in a different area as well. Maybe put them where the regular fan things were before, just so that all that big bustle of queuing isn't kind of impacting the flow of people around the sort of artist alley and merchandise area. But I think on the whole, they did pretty good. I'm not sure what other stuff I would change. I think if they were going to crack down on something, it would definitely be bootleg figures. Because it was really, really bad. It was so hard to find anything legitimate. I guess that's maybe because Toei said they were going to come and then didn't come. I don't know because there was no like official sort of sanctioned thing going on. There wasn't any like strict rules in place or someone who actually kind of knew what they were, doing to sort of work out what's real and what's not and enforce that kind of thing.
So from your perspective, it's kind of like good base, more, and a little more separation to things.
Yeah, exactly.
Stacey, from your perspective, what do you think could be different or changed or even kept the same because it was perfect? What do you think?
Well, I know they already talked about that they want to add more Japanese guests next year, since they originally did plan to have more, but in the end they were only able to get Horikawa. So
yeah, Golden Week got in the way from what I heard. They didn't really think.
Yeah, it's a big holiday period in Japan, so I guess flying people out is more expensive, or they might be busy or whatever. But, I mean, they've already talked about that they want to bring more next year, and even they want to bring voice actors from other dubs, like the Mexican dub and other languages besides English and Japanese, so that might be a cool thing to see. Yeah, as AJ said, maybe if they separate things out, or they even had, like, more panel rooms, they could have more options for different panels going on at once, because maybe that was part of the problem, is that if there's only, like, two things going on at once, people are either going to one or the other, and then it's gonna fill up because there's nowhere else for people to go unless they're just hanging out like in the exhibitors hall or something. But I think they said there will be another hotel, the one next to the convention center next year should be open at that time. So they'll have more options for like panel rooms and stuff with using that hotel. So
Gotcha. I guess, yeah. Tell me just a little bit before we start wrapping up about the layout of the convention center itself. Did it feel like enough space? Was it being used appropriately?
I guess so. I was mostly in the back.
You were behind the scenes.
I was behind the scenes. And sometimes when I was out in the main area, I wasn't sure where to go because I'm like, wait, how do I get back to that room? Because I've
never walked this way.
I know. I've only gotten to that place through the service elevator before. I'm not sure how to get there through the main hallways. And that does remind me of one thing. In the rare cases where I was walking around, like some people would come up to me and say like, oh, thank you for translating. And oh my God, you're Sailor Spaz. Like, well, that was really weird. I just like, I've never like people recognizing and thanking me. I was just embarrassed. But anyway.
AJ, what do you think? Was it a good layout, good flow to it otherwise?
I think it was mostly fine. I mean, the layout of the building is kind of strange. I don't know what most convention centers are like, but I guess in my head, I kind of imagine you sort of walk in and there's all the stuff and there's, it's easy to navigate.
No, the convention centers are always a maze of disasters.
Okay, fair enough. Well, the way this was kind of laid out is that you walked in and it was kind of this fairly narrow entrance hall thing. And like to your left, you had the big, massive hall. And then you just had like a single escalator and a single, what do you call them? I was going to say lift, elevator, to take you to the stuff upstairs. So that kind of got a bit congested. They had like stuff cordoned off and security around to kind of guide people, but it's not the most sort of friendly for masses of people. I think if this convention grew, like by maybe even 25% more, they might have to find another place.
Yeah, just choke points. I mean, that's pretty standard for American anime conventions. There's always one point where people get stuck and everyone ends up going either like all the way outside, all the way around, and doesn't necessarily work. Yeah,
right.
Yeah, I heard that they also lacked a lot of volunteers that they were expecting, so they were a bit understaffed, which may have led to some confusion sometimes about how the lines were working if there's nobody there to control the lines and such. So
you hope self-policing works, but not so much in anime cons.
Yeah, well, even Horikawa's line, I had to kind of police that line when we were at the autograph session because there was this tape on the floor that kind of showed a zigzag pattern to like, it'll crunch up the line if they zigzag, but then people would never zigzag and I'd have to keep going and say, oh, please zigzag. The line's getting long. It's going out the door. Please zigzag. I had a lot of roles. I was brought as an interpreter, but I ended up doing line control, doing cashiering, doing guarding, I guess, guarding against crowds gathering, which there was one night where we actually had to, it was after dinner, and we had to move where we were standing at outside waiting for the car because like a whole bunch of people came up and they're like just crowding around him and taking pictures like, okay, you know what, we're just gonna walk down the street a little ways and get this crowd away from him.
I will say one thing, the AV staff, whatever you want to call them, were excellent. They were so professional. I was very worried about the panel, about whether we were going to have enough mics, whether the projector was going to work, whether we were going to have cables, whatever. The guy who looked after us was fantastic. Like brought us all water and gave us like all the cables we needed. Perfect. And as far as like how the stuff ran in the grand ballroom, no hiccups at all, which I was pleasantly surprised by. They did really, really good.
That's good. That's the kind of thing that you would hear about because you always hear about how they failed. The fact that you didn't even think to say anything until now speaks volumes about how good it was. Because tech at conventions is always a massive failure.
Yeah. There's been times when my friends are running a panel and they had to like run out and buy whatever cord it was that they needed because the con didn't have it, even though they said they did have.
Right. They would say they'd have one thing, they wouldn't have it. Yep. That's pretty standard.
One of the coolest things for me was throughout the weekend, like at first it was just awkward being with an idol like Horikawa, but then as the days went on, we just built this nice rapport with both him and his manager, and like it just feels like a dream to be just like casually chatting with him. And each night we would go out to these dinners, which I know the different actors and staff have talked about, that they would do that after recording a lot, is like they'd go out to dinner and hang out. And it's like just the feeling of like being a part of something like that was like, I was getting so emotional. And, yeah, just being able to chat with him, and even getting to the point where it's like, yeah, we're talking to each other every day, and like with getting inside jokes within the group of the four of us. And well, it was eventually five, because a volunteer who was helping at the autograph booth eventually joined us for the dinners too. So like just making like this little friendship group with Horikawa and his manager, and it was just amazing. And I did get him one night at dinner to do a line for me because I didn't want to ask, but then his manager said, you can ask him to do lines if you want. Like, oh shit, okay. So I got a video of him doing Kakarot, you're number one, and then me freaking out afterwards.
Dude, that video is the best thing ever. Your squeal at the end of that, it just sums up the entire weekend. It's so good.
Yeah, that was my feeling the entire weekend, was internal squeeing, but sometimes external squeeing.
Bracket external screaming.
Yeah, so for me, that was probably one of the best things ever. And even though I was sad that I didn't get to hang out with like friends that I'd made on Discord and Kanzenshuu and Twitter and stuff, I can't say that I regret the position I was in, just because it was seems like once in a lifetime, but if we come back next year, maybe not once in a lifetime. And yeah, it was just such an incredible experience. And I was crying so much on the last day at the thought of I have to say goodbye to Horikawa. And then, and he'd been drinking a lot, and the last night at the hotel. Well, actually the first day we met him at dinner, he said he had friends make him a shirt, or like for his birthday, some friends made him a shirt that says "No alcohol, no life," and and definitely at each dinner, he and the manager would order a lot of wine and stuff and have a good time.
Sounds like my kind of party.
Yeah, and then sometimes they're both originally from Osaka, so there'd be these
so that started coming out.
There'd be these rapid fire arguments in Kansai Ben, and like they were like even to the point where they're like yelling at each other. It's like, okay, but we had a great time with them, and I'm just really, really grateful for this whole experience.
Well, that all sounds awesome. I'm very excited for you guys. I love seeing all the footage and the photos and hearing all the stories. Sounds like on tap for something really, really cool next year. Let me ask you guys now, because I have you both here. You are official Kanzenshuu contributors as of April 1st.
April Fools.
Everyone's fired. No.
Yeah.
I just want to hear a little bit what you guys are thinking, what you want to do, what's exciting to you. AJ, I know Heath and I have been talking with you on and off for a while, as we obviously have production guide and episode guides on the site. What are some things you want to add and do in there? Because I don't think I've talked to you since we kind of made this announcement, even though we've been talking about it offline for a while.
Yeah. Can I just like reveal what we're doing? Because it feels like a big open secret at the moment.
Yeah, sure.
The idea at the moment, me and Heath are essentially working on putting together, like totally overhauling the entire animation guide on the site. So one of the big things that Heath has done, totally independent from me, is to basically create an entire like search engine for episode stuff for everything from Dragon Ball through to Super and all of the movies and specials and stuff, which is so helpful. I think a lot of us animation fans have been relying on external sites like Animator's Corner to get easy access to that kind of thing, and he's done the most comprehensive thing ever. You just have everything at your disposal now. We're also going over we're doing little guides like what does on model mean, what types of approaches to animation are there. We are also, I think this is the biggest one that is taking up my time, is essentially porting my animation catalog from the forum over onto the main website in like a proper organized way, with actually information that is confirmed in like one section and stuff that's like very strong presumptions in another. And then we're also gonna have like little clips of like, here's a standout scene from this episode and this is who did it, and then you can like click through through their name and get all the stuff that they've done. And like, it's just this big crazy, just it's basically taking everything that was already there and putting it into a very easy to access and easy to understand way. I don't know what I'll be adding outside of what we've spoken about so far, but this is such a huge project that anything that does come will definitely come maybe like a year from now. We still have so much to do.
You know our timetables. We announce something like, and you'll see it in 5 years. And that's okay because we're not going anywhere and it'll still be there. And that's something that I've really valued in you joining us is you came in hard. You talked about joining the forum around the Battle of God's time, and you just haven't left. And I don't think you have any desire to do anything else than talk about and document this kind of stuff. And that's very exciting to me. And I really thank you for that.
I appreciate you for your website and stealing all other life choices away from me. It's all Dragon Ball now.
Nice. Stacey, so you're going to be doing some translation stuff for us. We've opened up our archives to you. Tell me a little bit about some of the secret hidden things that you've seen in there. Anything particularly exciting to you, or you're like, oh my God, this thing exists? Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. As I mentioned, it's like I've been around the site and the forums for so long, but now I'm on the inside, like, woo, the secret back workings. But yeah, it is fun to look at through the backlog of translation stuff, which is basically mostly what I'll be doing since Jake and Julian are assumably very busy with other things as well. So need more help to get through all the backlog of stuff that's acquired over the years.
My main question for you is, how does it feel reading all of the passive-aggressive comments between Julian and I, where he's like, I translated this 5 years ago. Can you put this up on the site, please?
Yeah, that is funny to see that too. But also just the incredible amount of stuff that still needs to be done. And then there's always new stuff, interviews here, sound bites there, that's still coming out that, I hope to definitely help with that backlog, get some of those interesting tidbits out there from all the interviews and stuff that have gone on over the years.
I felt bad. Like after I asked you, that was when I started doing a better job of actually scanning some of the stuff that Julian has left in my basement. And I was like, oh God, I make this look so bad. I'm like, hey, you're going to help us. Great. And then I add like an entire new page of material.
Yeah. It's like, all right, just get all of this done. Okay, sure. Why not? I'll try it. Yeah. I'm still struggling to make time, but it's that the timetable for the website is, it's not dated.
It's multi-decade.
Yeah, it's the multi-decade plan. I'm on track. I'm doing well.
Exactly. Oh, that's super fun. I'm so glad to have you guys along again. People have made such an impact, as friends and within our community. We're glad to have people along for the ride. So thank you both. And I look forward to sharing more work from you in the future. Well, Ajay, Stacey, thank you so much for joining me, talking about the convention. I loved hearing about it, talking a little bit about what we're doing on the website right now. And both of you, I'll be speaking with you again in the future here on the podcast.
Yay!
Thank you once again to Ajay and Stacey chatting with me. It sounds like a wonderful time. Loved hearing from them. So www.kanzenshuu, that is kanzenshuu.com. Got a lot of stuff going on the site, as you just heard from the two of them. A lot of cool things to check out. We're keeping up with the nearly complete works of Akira Toriyama. There's been some really cool stuff in there. That's always posted on the homepage of the website. We have them all tagged so you can read them all in a row if you want to do that. There's been some video game news and lots of other little tidbits here and there, so check it all out there on the website. I have some really cool things planned for the podcast in the near future, so stay tuned in the coming week. You may see some cool photos and tidbits coming out of New Jersey headquarters here. I'm just going to leave it there. Thank you everyone for tuning in, and we will see you next time here on the podcast. Have a good one. Bye-bye. Did you just say controversy?
Is that
he doesn't
a
know
British
how to speak
thing?
English. Yes, it is.
Oh, sorry, controversy.
Yeah, there you go.